Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the WOFOYO podcast. So at the end of Judges 8, Gideon dies. So he has 40 sons that judge Israel and ride donkeys. Abimelech is the son of one of his concubines. So what happens here in chapter 9, uh, he goes out and he forms a conspiracy to consolidate power. And he uses the goodwill of the brothers to lure them into a trap. And so I'm going to pick it up right there for a couple verses at least. And he basically sets this up. He goes to the people of Shechem and he's saying, "Hey, I'm going to do this. We're going to set you up." And anyway, when he does that, the men of Shechem are they're complicit in this conspiracy. And his mother's relatives spoke all these words on behalf of the ears of the leaders of Shechem, and their hearts inclined to follow Abimelech, for they said, "He is our brother." And they gave him 70 pieces of silver out of the house of Belberith, which Abimelech hired worthless and reckless fellows who followed him. So already there's some corruption here. And he went to his father's house at Ophrah and killed his brothers, the sons of Jerubbaal, 70 men on one stone. But Jotham, the youngest son of Jerubbaal, was left, for he hid himself. And all the leaders of Shechem came back together, and all Beth Millo, and they went and made Abimelech king by the oak of the pillar at Shechem. So one thing that's worthy of note in this story, because we're going to cycle back to it, is Abimelech kills his brothers on a stone, one
Hmm.
stone. He had 70 pieces of silver. There were 40 sons, but in addition, I guess he must have been like some grandsons, things like that. He killed 70 men on one stone, has 70 pieces of silver. So we will pick this up, and here's kind of where we get into the heart of what the Lord was showing me. Verse 7, it was told to Jotham, he went and stood on top of Mount Gerizim and cried aloud and said to them, "Listen to me, you leaders of Shechem, that God may listen to you. The trees once went out to anoint a king over them, and they said to the olive tree, Reign over us. But the olive tree said to them, Shall I leave my abundance by which gods and men are honored, and go hold sway over the trees? And the trees said to the fig tree, You come and reign over us. But the fig tree said to them, Shall I leave my sweetness and my good fruit, and go hold sway over the trees? And the tree said to the vine, You come and reign over us. But the vine said to them, Shall I leave my wine that cheers God and men, and go hold sway over the trees? Then all the trees said to the bramble, You come and reign over us. And the bramble said to the trees, If in good faith you are anointing me king over you, then come take refuge in my shade. But if not, let fire come out from the bramble and devour the cedars of Lebanon. Now, therefore, if you acted in good faith and integrity when you made Abimelech king, and if you have dealt well with Jerubbaal and his house, and have done unto him as his deeds deserved, skip down to verse 19, because the other couple verses he's just recounting the good that Gideon did. If you've then acted in good faith and integrity with Jerubbaal and his house to this day, then rejoice in Abimelech, and let him also rejoice in you. But if not, let fire come out from Abimelech and devour the leaders of Shechem and Beth Millo, and let fire come out from the leaders of Shechem and Beth Millo and devour Abimelech. So he said, if y'all were complicit in this, may God set it up so that you devour one another. And Jotham ran away and fled and went to Beer and lived there because of Abimelech, his brother. Abimelech fosters this vendetta as we continue to read against Jotham, and he wants to pursue him. So this ends up causing a rift between the men of Shechem and the men of Abimelech, even to the point to where he called him a bramble. In one of the towns, he takes out the men of the city and whoops them with a thorn bush or a bramble. So this hadn't happened, and Jotham's speaking prophetically here because he just calls it. and it ends up coming to pass. And so, as he's pursuing, they tear down and burn one city, and the corrupt men that are following with him. This ends up costing him his life because they're laying siege to the tower. Abimelech says, "Set this sucker on fire. We'll burn them all out." And there's this woman drops a millstone on his head, and basically he has a young man, his squire, kill him so that she doesn't get the credit. He he kills his relatives, these 70 men. He kills them on a stone, and he's killed by a stone.
Right.
We did a thing about Jesus talking
Mm-hmm.
about
I'm about
whoever falls on this stone will be broken, but whoever it falls on
right.
will be ground to powder. You almost see an illusion there.
Mm-hmm.
Same principle. This idea that you have somebody that's corrupt is in leadership. I really feel like the thing that spoke to me though was this parable. You have the olive tree. The trees want a ruler. The olive tree says to them, "Shall I leave my fatness wherewith by me they honor God and man, and go to be promoted over the trees?" In other words, the fig tree says the same thing. "Should I forsake my sweetness and my good fruit and be promoted over the trees?" The vine says to them, "Should I leave my wine, which cheers God and man, and be promoted over the trees?" Well, one of the things that really spoke to me, though, was this is kind of like what we have in government right now. You have people that are producing, because what do brambles produce? Nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing. All these other trees are producing, but these trees are not totally innocent in their refusal because they are being called upon to serve, but they get comfort. They get comfortable, content. They like the esteem. They don't feel like putting up with the headaches of ruling over the other trees, of being in service.
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of the reason that we see the country in the shape it's gotten in is because people that produce don't want to do it.
Right.
People that have accomplished something don't want to step into leadership, at least not civilly. They want to stay in charge of the company. They want to live off the fruits of their labors, or even some kind of inherited thing. They like the comfort, they like the esteem, they like the praise. And when you step into a leadership role, there's going to be instant criticism. There's going to be pushback. You're going to get slandered. It's just going to happen. That's the nature of the beast. So what's attracted to that? Brambles, which produce nothing. To the point, whether you like the guy, whether you don't like the guy, the fact that we have a president who made his, not that he didn't get some money, but he increased it quite a bit. He was actually a producer before he ever stepped into the political arena. And we find it strange because this used to actually be the norm. It was people that produced would step into public service.
The uh, the bramble the bramble produces nothing, therefore it has nothing to lose. Therefore, it's not a hard decision to step out and step in that leadership role. But the trees here, especially those who are producing, I see a few things here. They're producing. They're producing for their community. They're producing for their household. They're creating a legacy. They're doing all these things, and they're even alluding to the fact that this is their calling. This is what they've been called to do. This is their lot in life, so to speak, to do what they're doing. So I can see the hesitancy, not just from avoiding the headache of leadership, but there's also the hesitancy to step away from something that you're supposed to be doing. I saw this in the army. I not only saw it in others, but I saw it in myself too. In the infantry, there is a rank, there's a pay grade where you step out of dealing directly with soldiers and you step into a more administrative role. And that rank was E7. Once you become an E7, you're not directly impacting soldiers. You're leading and guiding NCOs and stuff like that. But the lower enlisted, you basically got your hands off of them now. That E6 staff sergeant was the last vestige, that last leadership role where you have one foot in the trench leading and guiding those soldiers, and the other foot in the office advising and assisting the admin side of things. And so I can see where, now for a lot of guys, they don't want to get out of the trench. They don't want to stop doing those things. So they're hesitant to take that next step into a higher role. Is that the case for everybody? No, I don't think it is. I think there's just some folks who avoid it simply because of the headaches and the heartaches. I see what you're seeing here too. And that here in our nation, we've got more Brambles that are stepping up than we do producers for whatever reason. And we have to have, well, we got to have producers start stepping up, or the Brambles will step up and just become rich. We already see what's happening when they become, selfish and stuff like that. So, yeah, the thing with producers is that they do.
Yeah.
They do things, and they usually do things by simply going and doing, and then worrying about the fallout after the thing has been done. Of course, you need some moral character to make sure that, it's the moral character, the moral fiber that ensures what you're doing is legal, because you can be a producer in a negative way too.
I'll teach you about moral fiber.
But producers, they produce, they go out and they do things, and they don't worry about the fallout, because they know that what needs to be done needs to be done. And then they let the chips fall where they may. Now, some of us don't have pockets deep enough to cover that.
Yeah.
But they do. So